Randy Orton didn't just interrupt John Cena on the April 25, 2025 episode of SmackDown. He dismantled him, not physically at first, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It was calculated, it was cold, and it was far more dangerous than a single RKO. The Apex Predator walked to the ring with the same stoicism he's carried for years, but this time there was a weight in his presence. When Orton's music hit, the energy in the arena shifted. Cena had been out there to gloat, basking in his 17th World Championship reign, his first as a heel, and what was supposed to be a typical monologue quickly transformed into a soul-skewering confrontation that no one could have predicted. Orton wasn't there to remind Cena of their past rivalries. He came to remind Cena of the one thing he's terrified of becoming: obsolete. It started with a simple but loaded observation. 25 years since our first handshake. Orton didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He delivered that line like a man who had been holding it in for decades. A subtle way to remind Cena that despite all the glitz, records, and suits, time spares no one. Cena's expression barely flickered, but anyone watching closely could see it. Orton wasn't here to ride nostalgia. He was here to puncture it. He said it was time for Cena to have kids and grow up. A jab at Cena's notorious detachment from settling down, from building a family outside the walls of WWE. Orton framed Cena as a man playing dress-up, clinging to the only identity he's ever had. Cena fired back, saying he had spent 25 years raising everyone else's children. A shot meant to humiliate Orton, to paint him as the absentee, the one who never stepped up. But it didn't land the way Cena thought it would, because Orton didn't flinch. The venom came next. Orton accused Cena of being a guest in the truth, no longer the face of the company. Cena had transitioned into a part-time figure, a man whose legacy now felt more curated than earned. He was the outsider pretending to be the standard. Orton didn't need, and Cena, for all his bravado, couldn't disguise the burn. He reached for his trump card, his 17 world championships. He brought up the number like it was holy scripture, waving it like a flag. But Orton wasn't impressed, a parody of himself. Then Cena escalated. He said that by retiring as champion, he'd freeze Orton's legacy at 14 titles forever. He wanted to be the deadbolt on Orton's ambitions, the man who closed the book before Orton could write another chapter. He didn't stop there. Cena claimed he would erase 3 generations of the Orton name from wrestling: Cowboy Bob, Randy, and whoever comes next. Erased. Overwritten by a man who never carried the same wrestling blood but somehow ended up writing history. Orton didn't snap. He didn't scream. His silence was more deafening than any threat Cena could muster. He just stared, and in that stare was 20 years of war, betrayal, and frustration finally boiling over. That's when Orton challenged him, not out of pride, but necessity. He needed to end this. Cena scoffed. The arrogance was thick in the air, Cena brushing off the challenge like Orton was some mid-card relic. But what Cena didn't anticipate was Orton's restraint. Instead of demanding a match that night, Orton simply asked for one thing: Backlash in St. Louis, in his house. Cena, perhaps believing he was still playing chess while Orton played checkers, accepted with a smirk, calling it their one last time clash. But the damage had already been done, because Orton didn't just win the argument. He exposed the rot underneath Cena's polished exterior. Later in the night, when most fans thought the moment had passed, Orton struck again. This time, it wasn't verbal. Cena was backstage, like a man who had just remembered what fear feels like. Then came the RKO, onto the concrete floor, no padding, no protection. Cena's body folded like origami. Officials flooded the area. Orton was gone before they could reach him, his championship belt lying on the floor like an afterthought. This wasn't just an attack. This was an exorcism. Orton wasn't just punishing Cena for the titles, the trash talk, or the smirks. He was stripping him of every lie he had convinced himself was truth, that he was still the face of WWE, that he could rewrite the narrative on his terms, that the story ends only when Cena says it does. But Orton disagreed. He had a different ending in mind, one where the man who once said, "The champ is here," realizes the only thing still here is his ego. And now, even that is under siege. The WWE Universe responded with stunned silence. Not boos, not cheers, silence. Because what they had just seen wasn't sports entertainment. It was the unraveling of a myth in real time. Cena had become a symbol, and Orton just reminded everyone that symbols can be shattered. For 20 years they had run parallel. Orton remained a weapon. His blade never dulled, his edge never softened. While Cena chased Hollywood and accolades, Orton stayed in the trenches, cutting down everyone who dared forget what made him dangerous. And on this night, he reminded the world that he never stopped being the most methodical killer in wrestling. The promo was only half the story. The ambush was the punctuation. Cena, for all his accolades and scripted confidence, was left defenseless. His promo had been bulletproof until it met something real. Orton wasn't interested in clever lines or mic battles. He brought war, cold, exact, merciless. There was no doubt anymore. Backlash wasn't just going to be a match. It was going to be a reckoning. The most haunting part wasn't the RKO. It was what Orton didn't say. He didn't gloat. He didn't yell, "I told you so." He just disappeared. Cena's aura had cracked. His legacy, once pristine, now looked brittle under the fluorescent lights of the backstage corridor. No one helped him to his feet. No one rallied behind him. For once, John Cena was alone. And that solitude, that absence of adulation, might have been more painful than the concrete floor. Social media erupted. Clips circulated like wildfire. "Randy Orton is him," trended within minutes. The rest, he wasn't just a veteran trying to recapture relevance. Orton became the necessary storm in a world where Cena had become the weather. Now, Backlash looms. St. Louis, Orton's hometown, the place where legends are remembered and myths are buried. Cena walks into enemy territory wearing gold, but just opportunity. And Cena, by accepting the match, gave him exactly that. The man who once stood tall as the face of the company, who survived the Nexus, the Authority, The Rock, and even Roman Reigns, now has to survive Randy Orton one last time. But this isn't 2009. This isn't legacy versus hustle, loyalty, respect. This is the culmination of everything Cena tried to avoid by coming back, the past catching up. And this time, it has fangs. There's no moral high ground, no redemption arc. Cena can't point to the crowd and soak in their loyalty, because they're not on his side anymore. Orton gave them a new lens, a clearer view of what Cena really is, a relic dressed in gold. Cena thought his heel turn would reset the clock. Instead, it marked his expiration date, and Randy Orton, with decades of scars and nothing left to prove, will be the one to close the book. The long and complex relationship between John Cena and Randy Orton has defined eras of WWE, but the latest chapter, sparked by Cena's dramatic, it's about legacy, reinvention, and the high-wire act of storytelling that only wrestling. John Cena turned heel at Elimination Chamber 2025. It wasn't just a heel turn, it was an ideological shift. The symbol of hustle, loyalty, and respect was obliterated the moment he aligned himself with The Rock and Travis Scott. Cena didn't just betray Cody Rhodes. He betrayed the fans who cheered him for nearly 2 decades. That WrestleMania 41 moment where Cena captured his historic 17th World Championship didn't feel like a coronation. It felt like a hostile takeover. And that's what makes this storyline so riveting. Cena is no longer interested in being liked. He's chasing history with unapologetic arrogance. And Randy Orton, who knows a thing or two about embracing his darker side, won't let him rewrite history without a fight. What elevates this feud above typical veteran matchups is the emotional investment and history behind every stare-down, every promo, and every physical confrontation. These two men have been rivals since the ruthless aggression era. They came up together, dominated together, and for years they were the dual faces of WWE. Orton representing chaos, and Cena representing order. Their paths have always been intertwined, and even when they weren't feuding, the shadow of their rivalry loomed large over the main event scene. But this is the first time they've truly switched roles. Cena is now the cold, manipulative opportunist, while Orton has evolved into a protective force. Isn't just compelling, it's poetic. There's also a unique chemistry between Cena and Orton that few rivalries can replicate. They don't need elaborate gimmicks or convoluted stipulations to sell a match. Their in-ring storytelling is a masterclass in pacing, emotion, and psychology. Orton's methodical, almost predatory offense contrasts beautifully with Cena's explosive style. But now, as a heel, Cena's in-ring demeanor has shifted. He's more ruthless, more cunning, and willing to bend the rules with a veteran's subtlety. This version of Cena will force Orton to tap into a part of himself he hasn't accessed in years. The part that was once known as the Legend Killer. And that's what makes their upcoming clash at Backlash in Orton's hometown of St. Louis so intriguing. It's not just a title match, it's a battle for philosophical dominance, not with words, but with violence. And this time, there's no 10 count coming to save him.